Funnily enough, I was pretty close to my prediction. I did say 100,000 for MH24. So I said that at the beginning of 24. Where I think we're going to be for BTC at the end of this year, I'm going to 175.
We all want to believe in something. In Chinese, belief also means trust. We want to trust our systems and each other so we can build a future beyond what we know. Join us at Consensus Hong Kong, where belief becomes real.
U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war uncertainty has Bitcoin price on a roller coaster ride. Joining us now to discuss the crypto markets and more is Usman Ahmad. He's the CEO and co-founder of institutional trading platform Zodia Markets. Welcome, Usman. Good morning.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you, Christine. Look forward to chatting.
All right, so Bitcoin is recovering from below $92,000 to over $100,000 when a deal was reached with Canada and Mexico to delay tariffs at least. But those gains were kept in check once tariffs against China went into effect. So give me your sense of what you see happening with this trade war uncertainty in the crypto markets.
Well, I think I wouldn't be arrogant enough to just talk about the crypto markets. The trade war uncertainty, I think it's going to be a macro and geopolitical implication for markets more broadly. For me, it was interesting and unsurprising to see Bitcoin and other crypto assets react very similar to other kind of macro risk on assets, right? So we saw it play out in real time because we have the benefit of weekend trading in crypto assets. Whereas, if we had that going on in the stock market, I think it would have been a bit of a bloodbath over the weekend as well, more broadly. And we saw the recovery into Monday this week of regaining, shall we say, some of those losses and the pairing back over the weekend. It's going to be super interesting to see how not just crypto assets, but the world at large reacts to what was signaled quite clearly by President Trump. It's not a surprise to anyone, but I think the implication, the implementation, and the challenges that's going to have on global trade, it's going to be.
Yeah, I just want to pick on one point you made, which is that Bitcoin is behaving a lot like traditional assets. It's supposed to be divorced from the traditional global system. It's supposed to be, a new digital era of money here. It's supposed to be a digital gold, if you will. But so what is it? Is Bitcoin more of a risk asset, or is it that digital safe haven that idealists had been talking about since the beginning?
Well, I think it's a combination. So, Bitcoin or other crypto assets don't operate in isolation, right? So, ultimately, from a correlation standpoint, whether Bitcoin behaves like tech stocks or whether it behaves like something that's completely decorrelated, actually, it is ultimately a risk asset, right? So when there's a risk-off event or when there's something macro that happens, it's not like we might want to go to the moon, but it's not like we're trading on the moon. We're trading in a macro environment that has geopolitical implications, and we've seen that over the course of many years. So whilst it is a digital representation of value, digital gold, however you want to represent Bitcoin, ultimately it is linked to what's happening in the world. And when there's uncertainty lends itself to essentially sell-offs, right? And by implication, that means a depression in the price.
So how are institutional players positioning amid this uncertainty in the short and long term?
So I think you've got different types of institutional players. So you've got the likes of MicroStrategies, a large corporate that's acquiring. I'm not going to say I know exactly what they're doing, but I dare say they may have been buying the dip, looking at dollar cost averaging their positions perhaps and getting more in. I think generally on a risk play, you would typically see institutions kind of looking for the exit, so to speak. But I'm not sure that any have, apart from the likes of MicroStrategy and others, any have big enough positions to make it like a real kind of target for them. I think there would have been volatility plays. So I think there would have been people looking at, are we seeing a pronounced dip? Are we seeing a short term? And what do we see recovery being? The thing that we do always see is by virtue of the fact that we trade 24/7 in the crypto markets, recovery tends to be much faster. So the dip, the downward trend seems to be fast, but the recovery seems to also be faster. So yeah, we have extremes of volatility, which means that we were, many of us in the industry were not surprised to see the recovery pretty quickly of most of the losses were kind of won back pretty quickly.
If we see a protracted trade war that lasts for Trump's full term, what do you think that will mean for risk appetite in the markets?
I mean, that's a big question. So I think with any form of change, you have the initial flurry of change. So you have you kind of the implementation and then the kind of the partial wind back, shall we say. I think we're going to see that perhaps play out over an extended period. What I think we'll see is, as people get more comfortable with a bit of the uncertainty, I think we're going to see a general upward trend around digital assets more broadly, including Bitcoin, because the administration coming in is markedly different, and the rhetoric is markedly different from the US, whichever way we slice it, it's one of the global leaders in digital assets. It's one of the biggest markets in the world for digital assets, as some of the biggest market participants, many of whom have been struggling over the last few years with the previous regulatory regime, shall we say.
What do you think ultimately will be the impact of tariffs on the crypto markets? We know that in terms of consumer goods, countries will see a rise in prices. But what about the price of risk assets like crypto?
So I think, at some point you're going to have almost a normalization of some of these the tariffs and whatever's going to happen, however it's going to play out. I think personally, I'm going to see that there's a set of positive tailwinds for the digital asset markets and crypto markets more broadly, because we've got an administration in the US, again, the biggest market in the world, which is patently different to the situation before, right? So I'm hoping regulation by enforcement is a thing of the past. I'm hoping there's a degree of certainty that allows for the actors in the ecosystem that have always been trying to do the right thing. I don't think people in this space, certainly not myself and people that I talk to regularly, are going out trying to skirt regulation, but actually having clarity there, I think is going to allow us to then build and build better. The other really interesting thing that I'll also touch upon that is maybe slightly tangential, we've seen stable coins being a kind of hot topic over the course of the last year, and I see that continuing. Obviously, we've seen the executive order around the banishment or the mitigation of a central bank digital currency in the US and broader adoption of dollar-backed stablecoins as a mechanism and a means of moving value, as a counterpoint to tariffs in terms of trade, actually making trade easier, making movement of value easier, making transfer easier without as much friction in the ecosystem. I think that's another area that we haven't seen what's going to happen there. Should make the ability to transact faster. I'm not saying it's going to do anything to the trade imbalances that I think President Trump is trying to manage, but I think it's going to have a positive effect on the ability for countries to do business with each other.
Definitely more options out there in terms of handling currencies with a digital currency that can cross borders very easily. Speaking of which, you mentioned, the optimism for the crypto markets in the United States. Well, Trump signed an executive order on Monday to establish a sovereign wealth fund. And I was just looking on crypto Twitter, and some of the comments were pretty funny. Some saying, this is better branding than a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Sovereign wealth fund may be more digestible to the traditional types. But what do you think this could mean for crypto? Could a sovereign wealth fund mean holding the government's Bitcoin holdings?
For me, a sovereign wealth fund has a very, very clear mandate and direction, and we in our business do deal with many sovereign wealth funds in states around the world. So in the context of that, if we take what President Trump has kind of issued on face value, creating a sovereign wealth fund for driving value and outcome for the US PLC, as it were, feels like a logical thing to do, frankly, more broadly. If we infer that it's going to be a mechanism to hold a strategic reserve of Bitcoin, I mean, President Trump hasn't been particularly mincing his words in the past. I would have envisaged that he would have just come out and said it, frankly. Mm-hmm. Now, does it mean that there's an umbrella under which, as part of a diversified portfolio, Bitcoin is going to be held as a part of driving wealth and creating value for the US government and more broadly the US at large? I think that's probably a sensible position. I think it's probably one of those kind of it's a means in between. Is there a way of driving on behalf of the US government as a sovereign investment in things like AI, investment in new technologies, and also have kind of a stockpile of crypto assets and Bitcoin in particular that are going to help? It feels like that could be a logical and sensible way to go. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves.
Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the largest in the world, they've invested $500 million in MicroStrategy. They also have 200 or just a couple $100 million in indirect Bitcoin exposure. That's something we could possibly see with a U.S. sovereign wealth fund. And if I recall some remarks by BlackRock's Larry Fink at the World Economic Forum, he said they've been talking to sovereign wealth funds interested in Bitcoin. So do you see that trend as a boon for the crypto markets?
Oh, absolutely. Because, I mean, when you talk about institutional adoption, you don't get much more institutional than sovereign wealth funds who are managing money on behalf of countries, right? I mean, I don't think there's a better definition of institutional. I don't know what the next one above institutional is, but it's basically countries, and that's what we're talking about. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, indirect exposure, that's great. As a proxy, we've also seen pension funds start to allocate into the actual underlying. As it happens, at Zodia Markets, we actually helped a UK pension fund advisor allocate into Bitcoin directly late last year. So that was an area where we were super excited by that and helped enable that. And so when you've started to get pension funds and sovereign wealth funds that are allocating into the underlying asset itself, I think that's a huge boon for anyone that's involved in the ecosystem, because it kind of talks to what people that have been in the industry for a long time have been talking about, which is true institutional adoption.
So in the coming months, do you think we're going to see a big surge in crypto demand, or the opposite, with this trade war uncertainty, it could deflate the economy a little bit there?
So I think we are going to, so you won't be surprised to hear, Christine, that my position is that we're going to see a surge. I'm an optimist.
Prediction end of the year?
Yeah, well, it's a prediction end of the year. So funnily enough, I was pretty close to my prediction. I did say 100,000 for end of 24. So I said that at the beginning of 24. Where I think we're going to be for BTC at the end of this year, I'm going to 175.
All right. David Sachs, he's the crypto czar in the United States. He's having a news conference on digital assets this afternoon on how the Trump administration and Congress will work together to secure America as a leader in the digital asset ecosystem. What do you hope to see out of that conference?
I mean, for me, I think, as I mentioned slightly before, just even the fact that that's happening, right? Even the fact that we're moving towards clarity and frameworks that can allow for innovation, adoption, utilization. One of the challenges, and as a business, we operate outside of the US, but have been hampered. Our risk appetite has not been there in terms of, or wasn't there certainly, in terms of dealing with US clients and participants, despite it being the biggest in the world, because of the uncertainty around being subject to almost enforcement, the regulation by enforcement, or just at the whim of regulators. So from our standpoint, it's really heartening to hear this coming, this press conference. Really looking forward to hearing what the outcomes are. But ultimately, what I'd be hoping for is a clear path, some rules of the road, some standardization. I mean, ideally, I'd love for the US to take a lead on a global regulatory basis to provide clarity on how we can collectively utilize and adopt this, what I think is still transformational technology in its very early stages, with Bitcoin and crypto being kind of the first viable use case of blockchain technology, really transforming the world. And yet, I think as we sit here right now, we need the US to be a leader in that. And unfortunately, for the last few years, the US has absolutely not been a leader. It's been, in many respects, an impediment. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that change. And I'm hopeful that we're going to, it probably won't be today, but we'll at least start laying out a groundwork or a framework in order to move forward and provide some certainty for people that want to do the right thing and operate within the rules. But just actually having clarity on what those rules are would be a great start point.
Well, Usman, you're also joining us at Consensus Hong Kong in 2 weeks. Do you think you could give us a quick preview of what to expect?
So Consensus is a great conference, right? Credit to CoinDesk, you do a great job of putting it on. I attended a couple of years ago in Austin. I'm delighted to be going back to Hong Kong. I've got very fond memories. I've lived in Hong Kong for a number of years, so I'm looking forward to being back there. I'm going to be on a panel. I'm not going to give too much away, but we're going to be talking about liquidity in the digital asset ecosystem. I think there's going to be some really interesting discussions. It looks like a stellar lineup of people here, so a wide range of people from all around the world look like they're going to be flying into Hong Kong. And I think in many respects for Hong Kong, that's a great thing because it's been a challenge there, in terms of perhaps after COVID, the recovery after COVID has been a little bit stilted, perhaps. But super excited to be back there and partaking in hopefully another fantastic conference.
Well, looking forward to seeing you there, Usman. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. And, look forward to seeing you there as well.
All right, folks, join us. Consensus Hong Kong, February 18th to the 20th. That was Zodia Market CEO, Usman Ahmad.